GTO, also called Great Teacher Onizuka, is a manga created by Toho Fujisawa, who also have made Rose Rose, Toko, among a few others. Now, if you ever heard about Fujisawa, it will come as no surprise if you also have heard about GTO, since it's his best-selling manga series with over 50 million copies sold worldwide, which to me is a clear indication of the type of love people have towards the series, also with an averaging score of just under 9 out of 10 on my anime list. Our main character is a young man in his 20s, 22-year-old to be exact, and has gotten a job as a teacher, from which his way of teaching is all about making sure that his students is choosing their own path and getting the opportunity to explore the fun life as of how it is to be a teen. It is a story about a teacher challenging the Japanese educational system and questioning the meaning of living if it's only to fulfill the purpose of having a higher education and the responsibility that is being given to these young students. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything, this is a spoiler-free video, however I will still go in depth as to why I think GTO deserves the ranking of being one of the best mangas ever to be created, and why you should go read it as well. So for all of you newcomers who have no idea what GTO are, I'll describe it as the following. A manga built upon comedy by using naughty and flat fall on the tail humor with a very strong proposition of questioning our educational system and what it means to experience life at its fullest with its ups and downs. Upon first glance of reading, you will see this as a flat perv humoristic story, a 22-year-old guy who's ready to jump in the sack with a young student if she lets him, has no moral, has no educational skills, cheated upon his 5th rank college degree, day drinks and like to reminisce his younger days of being a gang member. This is our protagonist, Great Teacher Onizuka, a guy who doesn't care about other people's prejudice that they may have against him unless they are either A, a cute female, or B, one of his students. Onizuka gets a job as a teacher at a school called Holy Forest Academy, which is a highly prestigious school amongst the Japanese educational system. Only teachers with good degrees gets the right to work at a place like this. With the exception of Onizuka, he's the total opposite, yet he manages to get the job because the chairwoman sees potential in him, as being one of the few who might be able to get the notorious Class 4 under control, who allegedly have managed to make teachers quit their job by giving them depression, eating disorder, etc. This class is described as the devil class, with hellish students who are not afraid to get their hands dirty if it means that they succeed in getting rid of their teachers. Now, not every student in this class is some hellish kid, and we quickly get to see that the kinds of students who don't want to participate in the cruelty of getting these teachers removed, well, they are hereby stamped as an outsider and gets bullied by the other students, even to an extent which these students are considering suicide as their only outlet. Also, we have students from class 4 who doesn't even bother showing up to school and have been gone for months or even years. Now, to the other teachers at Holy Forest Academy, they see this as improvements since they won't have to deal with as many futile kids and hereby it will help giving the school a better reputation. Seeing as the educational system have given up on them, it's hard for these kids to find a way out of this rabbit hole, and instead of taking a step back and look down, they just keep on digging. Hence, you may think this class is hereby a class only containing students with bad grades, and no, that is far from the truth. We have a few exceptions when it comes to this, but still the majority in this class is doing decent in regards to grades. What they don't do good in is enjoying life, having an understanding what it means to be a kid and a teen, and go out and explore boundaries, learn about loss, failure, success, etc. These are all mandatory life lessons which has not been given to these young teens, and throughout your read you will get a clear indication as to why. Now, this brings in the question, is our educational system flawed, and does our society require a new definition as to what it means to be successful and how to administrate work properly instead of always giving it to the one who's book-wise and not necessarily profession-wise? Don't get me wrong, I don't want to create controversies as to whether I think the Japanese system is working or not, but suicide is or has been considered a major social issue. Luckily, the Japanese suicide rate has dropped throughout the years, but with the publication of GTO in 1997, I don't think there's any doubt as to what Fujisawa was trying to portray throughout his art and storytelling. This is what Onizuka is here for. He is the teacher that can learn these kids what they are missing out on, by giving them the opportunity to explore and discover new things and ways to deal with the hardship that is life itself. This does often happen at the expense of Onizuka, but to him it's every single yen, punch, police chase or even wounded gunshots worth. You see, Fujisawa takes all these standardized teenage problems, throws them in a bucket and shows what lies beyond if a kid doesn't get the opportunity to try and express their own feelings and push boundaries as of knowing how it is to be a kid or a teen. He illustrates the meaning of happiness, grief and what psychological issues it can give a person if they never have been able to express themselves, only to be contaminated by self-esteem problems. These illustrations might not come to show within the first few volumes, but just continue on reading, and at some point you'll see that many of these outbursts is a cry for help regarding the problems that has come with the norm of being the absolute best and neglecting mandatory life lessons. Also questioning the position of being an educational teacher, and illustrates the influence and importance of being a good teacher that cares for his students and making school a place where hardship can be forgotten, even if it's just for a small frame of time within the day. These kids that's being illustrated in GTO have all their own individual problems, and some of them have even worse than others, yet most of these problems that the manga is addressing is stuff that can be related to our current world of society. Problems like parents investing every waking hour of their day into their job just to make sure that their family won't miss out on anything in regards of having a good life. And when I'm saying having a good life, the question is in regards to what? The parents forget that working 24 hours a day is at the expense of their own kids, and that the time they should have been together, parent and child, is suddenly nanny and child. The time and bond that hereby should have been connected between a parent and its kid is non-existent, and when the kid suddenly outbursts in doing something mean or illegal, it's a cry for help, yet the parent won't participate in accepting the guilt of being a part of the problem. These are some of the more in-depth problems that's being portrayed in GTO. But Fujisawa is also making sure to bring in some less dramatic problems and focuses on the more common everyday stuff that can be characterized as being a teen. Stuff like having a school crush, being afraid of getting a bad reputation, and so on. This brings a breath of fresh air into the mix, especially after a more hectic or intense event just occurred. And this, to me, at least gives a relaxation moment where I'm just reminisced of my own teen days, with the exception of having such an awesome teacher as of Mr. Onizuka. But a manga as great as GTO does still not come without its flaws, and even though GTO is one of my favorite mangas ever, I still have to accept that even within a masterpiece, there's bound to be flaws that needs to be addressed. Firstly, GTO is somewhat a sequel to another manga called Shonen Junai Gumi, later to be retitled as GTO The Early Years. And as the title describes it, it's the story of Onizuka and his best friend in their teenage years. Now, you don't need to have read GTO Early Years to understand GTO, but a very small percentage of the jokes that's being portrayed in GTO is reminiscent from the early years. Same goes with Onizuka's best friend and his cop friend. Those two have somewhat a hatred towards each other, which is not being addressed as of why in the manga itself, but as of total, we're talking a few chapters filled with quotations and funny reminders of the early years, and does not take away anything from the story that Fujisawa is portraying. It just may throw a few people off as of questioning who these people are and what the relation to Onizuka is. After you have read what I'd like to describe as one of the true main climaxes in the story, where every demeaning or bad event suddenly collides at the exact same time, it feels like Fujisawa fell short on what story to tell next, and instead of addressing those few problems that are still reliant, he decides to do a 180 and introduce a bunch of new characters when there's only 1/5 of the series left. To me, this feels short-sighted, and at a time like this, when you have already grown attached to the characters within, since you have been following most of them from the earlier volumes, the same attachment cannot be said to these new characters within such short time frame, and to me it feels like they are taking too much screen time away from our main cast. But nonetheless, if these are my only issues I have with the series, I still dare say it's a masterpiece, and that Fujisawa and his team have done a great job portraying what the series is all about, and that is to show teenagers that life is short yet very valuable, so don't get stuck in the past, and while you still can, try to live life to its fullest. And when life gets tough, don't hide, address the issues, and keep moving forward. All of this is something GTO shows us through comedy storytelling with lots of inappropriate misbehave, perverse thoughts, but most of all, lots and lots of laughter that brings happiness to anyone who can read it, and hereby I dare to say that anyone who have read the entirety of GTO can agree that this is not just some random storytelling, but a story that makes you reflect over your own life decisions and on whether or not you have accomplished what you always wanted to do and not what you were told to. And that is why, folks, you should go read The Unstoppable Force that is Great Teacher Onizuka. A perv with no moral or decency in life that knows more about the meaning of living than any high educated man or woman within this universe, and dare I say to some extent that this can be affiliated within our own as well.